Currently, Elite Dangerous hosts 52 playable ships, counting ship-launch fighters and fleet carriers, so it would not surprise anyone that some of those are better than others. However, I have long since proclaimed that Elite is not just unbalanced, but extremely so. And with the new ships getting released in the last year or so, that claim is getting more true and true by the second that even the space dads are starting to notice. And so, in a rare brain fart-induced aneurysm, I thought, oh, what the hell, I might as well give developers a blueprint to improve the game. Call it the Big Book of Game Balance, or how to make Elite Dangerous more fun and interesting. By the great and powerful Yamiks! So here's the thing, even before most recent ship additions, Elite Dangerous players opted to fly a very select bunch of ships, despite the game offering so much more. So clearly there's something up with the balance. Space dads were opting to fly ASP Explorers, Anacondas, Corvettes, Cutters, Pythons, Fer-De-Lances, Chieftains, and Kraits. All the while, such ships as Dolphin, Diamondback Scout, Federal Gunship, ASP Scout were shunned and literally never picked. And don't you think it's a crying shame? See, I think it's absolutely sad to see that about 70% and more today of available ships are just utterly irrelevant. See, any game is more fun when every item in it has use and unique niche to fill. And guess what? That's also generally accepted as the best practice in game design as well. In a game with mostly vertical progression style, no tool or item should be outclassed. This creates a lot more varied and vibrant game environment. And only a fool would use the excuse of, but that's how technology progresses, new items are always better. And while I could explain the game design principles of vertical and horizontal progression, or why power creep is so bad, really, only an idiot don't understand those things, so let's just cut to the chase. Why is Yamiks even doing this? See, in the past I've stated that I would not make suggestions on how to fix the game, mainly due to two reasons. I'm not getting paid to do the job or fix the mistakes of somebody who's employed to do that, meaning the game designer, QA team, and coders. And second, with Elite, over the years I've seen developers take very hands-off approach to the game design overall, meaning balance passes would never happen, unless players found an exploit or got money really fast, or somehow managed to circumvent the tedious grind, or something is extremely overpowered, like engineering in the early days, and even then developers took months to notice. And yes, I'm not joking, these for the last 10 years have been the only instances where developers actually bothered to make real changes. But please, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But anyways, what changed? Why is the great and powerful one willing to share his great wisdom? Well, despite my massive disagreements in Frontier selling ship packages, which are pay to win by the way, you're not fooling yourself nor anyone else by claiming otherwise, the game mechanic changes and updates, like for example power play and colonization, sparked, I don't know, I suppose a naive hope in me. That maybe somebody is listening, and somebody is willing to make a change for the whole game to improve it as well. So here's my attempt to convince you, the casual Elite enjoyer, viewer, as well as the developer. We need more options, not more blatant power creep. Old ships are awesome, and they need some love too. Yes, even ASP Scout. After all, Yamiks being one of the very few, if not the only one to have properly reviewed every single ship in Elite, gives this Space Latvian a unique insight into what really is wrong with every single ship in the game. So then, Elite Dangerous has 42, well okay now 44 different and unique ships to fly. 44! Now tell me, how many of you can actually say you've flown more than 5 of them, ever? Don't you think that in your, let's say, 100, 200, 500, and maybe even 1000 hours, that's kind of a bit weird? See, Elite can be so much more vibrant galaxy, filled with really interesting space vessels where everyone is flying their own niche, and it doesn't feel like a downgrade in any kind of a way. And you'd be surprised that it really doesn't take that much changing to make them shine again. And so in that spirit, I made this list composed of very simplistic changes, or at least as simple as possible. See, I aim to address the most glaring problems of the game balance of Elite Dangerous, so rest assured that there are plenty of fine-tuning that can be done. But let's worry about that later. Also, it's worth mentioning that Elite Dangerous game balance is really not that different from any other game. You have niche items, or specifically ships that are made for, say, combat, trading, or exploration, you know, the main 3 gameplay types, where each of them sacrifice something in order to excel. Like, for example, combat ships often sacrifice a lot of their internal space and jump range, but in turn get either more defenses or weapons. And then there are ships that are known as multi-role ships, you know, jack of all trades, that try to round out all the performance aspects but never beat any of the niche ships in their categories. Pretty obvious, isn't it? And one more thing, before we get into the list, in recent times, more than ever, I've noticed a lot, and I mean a lot, of space dads or forum knights who have never flown more than 5 popular ships, never looked at the stats, and yet proclaim buttloads of complete stupid retarded crap. You know, the Dunning-Kruger effect in full force. I mean, just you watch, the comments will be filled with bad suggestions, but you know, that's alright. Throw out your idea even if it is bad, and who knows, maybe you might learn something. Or maybe suggest something really brilliant. And so, come on, in the comments down below, feel free to suggest whatever changes you might think would help either decrease the overpowered ships, or raise up some that are, let's just say, wallowing in the dirt. Just remember that great and powerful Yamiks is infallible. Woo! Anyways, let's get into it. Alright, and so we start off with the baseline premise. All ships should be sold presenting theoretical max stats, like for example cargo space, speed, rotation, armor, and shields. Or, at the very least, A-rated stats. I seriously can't tell you just how misleading the E-rated, bizarre stock ship stats have always been. No new player, hell, not even an experienced player can ever make an educated purchase due to this. And it really does surprise me why developers have left it such way. I mean, it's like they don't play their own game. Ugh. Okay, be nice, Yamiks, be nice. Oh, additionally, I will try to avoid as much as possible delving into the general game changes. But in order to uplift small ships, well, this suggestion has to go through. There has to be some sort of a small ship exclusive stations and missions, otherwise they're always getting overshadowed by mediums. Okay, got it? These are the general suggestions. Let's move on to the ships individually. Sidewinder. Roll the jumping off point. Suggested changes? Nothing. You see, this should be the quote-unquote standard by which you start the game and everything is compared to. You know, the literal jumping off point. And as is, it's fine. Hauler. Roll alternative starting ship geared towards trading. Suggested changes? It should be sold for less credits. You can easily achieve this by stripping the internals from stock variant. You see, Hauler is the cheapest ship in the whole game, and yet the way it is sold is actually the second cheapest. Alternative suggestion? Change the name to Jumper and add some kind of an exploration bonus. See, the ship has a really good jump range, it's a perfect taxi ship as well. Hell, even the name taxi would be better. Eagle. Roll early combat alternative to Winder. Change? Nothing. Except for other ships. You see, this ship is fantastic. This should be the most maneuverable ship in the whole game, just like before, meaning that no other ship, with exception of ship launch fighters, should beat its rotational speeds. Like ever. This is extremely aspect of the ship lineup itself, I think. The more weight you cram onto a ship, the slower they are to turn. This principle should never be broken. Cobra 5? Adder. Roll early multi-role upgrade from the starting 3. Changes? Nothing. Like, seriously, it's perfect. Spiegel. Roll early combat upgrade and racing ship. Changes? Nothing to the ship itself, but need deeper game changes. See, Navy rank system sucks ass and everyone knows it. It should be replaced by some kind of a quest line, where Imperial Eagle should be the introduction to. Additionally, it would be great if the game would get some sort of a racing minigame / storyline. But again, that's a bigger game change that goes beyond the scope of this. Viper 3. Roll main mid-early game combat and racing ship. Change? Nothing! See, Viper is fast as fuck already, cheap and very powerful. Its shortcomings are in the jump range and cargo space. So, as is, it's perfect counter for Cobra 3. Cobra 3. Roll multi-role ship. Suggested change? Nothing! See, this should be the standard for the early game, since it's not only a proper price to performance, but also a poster child for the game. The ship itself should never be outclassed, after all, its shortcomings are very clear. Not as good of a jump range as Adder or Hauler, but more cargo space. Same weapons as Viper 3, but not as fast, maneuverable, or tanky, and pretty expensive on top. The perfect middle ground. Viper 4, roll, upgraded early combat ship. Change? Nothing. At least to the ship itself. Need deeper game changes. See, Viper 4 should be the perfect hard hull tank. However, it requires a lot more complex changes to the missiles and how much damage they do to the modules, as well as the potential complete rebalance of shields, and maybe even engineering as a whole, in order for the role it occupies to actually have worth. However, without changing those larger systems, you could buff the top speed as a patchwork, but that's not perfect, because Viper 3 already has the speed niche. See, Viper 4 used to have the highest hull of all small ships. It was its unique aspect, and it should remain its unique aspect. Cobra 5? Diamondback Scout, roll, Combat Explorer. Suggested change? Nothing. Or maybe a bit more jump range. The ship has the same weapons as Cobra and Viper, better jump range, but sacrifices durability and cargo space for it. Now, it might need some long-distance combat missions or other in-game changes to make it more viable, but that's beyond today's scope. And the same goes with the low ship heat, which makes it perfect for stealth missions, but really there aren't any. Cobra 4, roll, upgraded multi-role ship. Suggested change? I don't know. See, this was the exclusive to Horizon's pre-orders back in the day, so yes, this is the exclusive kind of pay to win. However, developers back in the day made it underperformant on purpose in subtle ways to not feel like pay to win. Like for example, the top speed and jump range are kinda crap. All the while, because it is an upgraded Cobra, it gave one extra weapon port and cargo space. See, the ship itself is problematic because it has to remain as an exclusive to pre-order customers, otherwise potential lawsuits and complaints might come through. But frankly, I think it's time to unexclusive it and improve it. Say for example, buff its hull, like Viper 4, but never exceed it. Type 6, roll, trading. Suggested change? Nothing. See, this is already the cheapest medium ship with great jump range, garbage everything else for the big price tag, just to get that cargo space. Overall, I think it's perfect, and an upgrade for trading gameplay. Well, maybe trading reserved optional compartments could be added to make it less explory, but that's about it. Dolphin, roll, passenger ship. Suggested change? I don't know. Either reduce jump range fall-off due to the weight, or major game changes to passenger missions themselves. See, the problem stems from the passenger mission subtype of gameplay itself, and since its introduction it's been in a very bad state. Luxury cabins, which only 3 ships in the whole game can utilize, allowing for extra special missions, are really not that different or better than the simple first-class missions that every other ship can pick up. So yeah, there is a need for missions that provide a special niche for these ships to actually change in the first place, not the ship itself, which again goes beyond today's scope. Alternative easy patchwork would be to just increase the jump range when loaded up with passenger cabins to compensate. I don't know. Diamondback Explorer, roll, exploration. Suggested change? Nothing, except for other ships. See, this is already the cheapest ship to rival the hyper-expensive long-jumping ships, but it comes at the cost of not only credits, but also internal cargo space. Think of a super skinny, stripped-out racing car for explorers. The ship used to compete with ASP Explorer due to the better jump range and cheaper price, but usually was shunned due to the smaller fuel scoop, a perfect natural drawback to more well-rounded but more expensive ships. Cobra 5, roll, multi-roll? Question mark? Suggested change. Reduced overall rotational speed by at least 10%, reduced top speed by at least 50 meters a second, reduced bulkhead HP by at least 60 HP, reduced jump range not to beat Type 6, removed 1 Class 2 optional compartment, restrict 2 Class 3 compartments for non-combat. Now, there's absolutely no question that Cobra 5 is overpowered as hell. It beats Viper 4 with hull HP while being a lot, and I mean a massive lot faster. Cobra 5 also should not be as close in maneuverability to Eagle. After all, how is this ship even a multi-role? Is really beyond me, and it should not be dedicated cargo ship, even if it is more expensive in this kind of a fashion. Hence, it should have less jump range than stripped out Type 6. See, Cobra 5 should be more refined version of Cobra 4 instead. So that means more cargo, yes. Better jump range, yes. And maybe throw in a little bit more speed and maneuverability. Maybe even better shield than Cobra 4. But that's it. For the price, it would be good enough and still would have a place in the game. However, obviously, because this is one of the pay-to-win era ships, when Frontier released insanely overpowered ships so that the suckers would buy into the whole pre-made ship packages. So yeah, those ships better be good to incentivize people buying those things. And okay, if you want to be really scummy, be that way. However, you can introduce pay-to-win in a lot more subtle ways. Ways that do not instantly and aggressively rape your game. Bottom line, if you need to make the new ship really good, okay, but for crying out loud, you don't need to make it so insanely great like this. Hell, in PvP, the thing's basically unkillable. And then the jump range and the cargo space. Seriously, why? And the answer constantly goes back to those pre-made ship packages. That's why. Still, there is one thing that the Cobra 5 should keep. Its unique thing about the yaw and pitch speeds being very similar, so keep the ratio of rotational speeds. Just reduce them by about 10%, not to mention all the other suggestions I had. Imperial Courier. Roll, combat. Change, increase jump range by at least 5 light years, and slight increase in yaw or pitch speeds. See, as a small and especially light ship, it lacks the survivability to compete with larger ships, so it should compensate in some other ways. And what better way than to embrace its namesake, the Courier. And to make it more competitive versus Vulture, it needs more maneuverability. In fact, it should beat Vulture, which is quite a lot more heavier. Keelback. Oh god. Roll, combat trader. Suggested change? Well, increase the bulkheads by at least 50%, add class 4 or 5 military reserved slot, increase the top speed by at least 30 meters a second, and increase rotational speed by at least 10 degrees for pitch and yaw combined. Oh god's Keelback, right. So technically it is a retrofitted Type 6, yet is missing class 4 slot, and somehow also has less hull HP when fully kitted out with hull reinforcements. So this clearly needs fixing. Give back the class 4 slot and make it reserved, or the hell upgrade it to class 5, so Type 6 has some more cargo but Keelback still has more hull. Basically properly turn it into a combat brick. This overall is a weird ship. I don't even know why it exists, but if it does, then I guess it should be useful, at least in something. But regardless, Keelback is and should be a hull tank, no question, but it should not beat any of the 3 federal piggies, and yet still should nip at their heels, hence the need for more hull. However, it should not lose speed. Plus, after all, if it has those funny thrusters on the side, so it should at least run faster than this, or at least turn faster. Also, it's interesting to note that this is the second worst ship in the game, competing with one of the South Kruger ships. You know the one. Now, Keelback is interesting in one other way. See, back in the day, developers were told by the community how much it sucked. Still, what made Keelback rather funny was that everyone noticed, hey, it has a ship launch fighter and yet only 1 seat, so it can't do multi-crew. And as a surprise to everyone, developers actually addressed that by adding, jankily so, another seat into Keelback, along with the promises to also fix the worst ship in the game, but conveniently forgot about that. But even with that extra multi-crew seat, it's absolutely worthless because multi-crew itself is worthless. So, in order to properly fix the ship, you need more armor and a little bit more speed, and that would potentially make the ship retrofittable for anti-Xeno combat, or some really stupid PvP build. After all, the ship has the curse of the ship launch fighter, but we'll get into what that is later. ASP Scout. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change, more internal compartments. Ah yes, the notorious ASP Scout. Honestly speaking, I think I'm the reason why the ship has become known as the worst space garbage of all the 40+ ships in Elite, since, you know, Yamiks is still one of the few people who actually tries to look at every ship in the game. But anyways, along with the Keelback, these 2 ships were told to the developers way back in Horizon's days during one of the streams that they were bad, like really bad, and developers promised some change. And yes, I wish I could find the stream from those days, but alas, I don't want to waste my time, so be my guessed. But anyways, for Scout, the biggest garbage in the game, the solution actually was very simple. Give it an extra Class 1 or Class 2 optional compartment space, without changing any other stat. Well, okay, maybe increase the overall jump range so that it beats ASP Explorer, but that's it. This would not change Scout's cargo capacity compared to its rivals, while adding some more combat durability and versatility in other types of gameplay. Yes, it's that simple for Scout to be improved and dragged out of the dogshit tier. See, the ship already boasts the best rotational speeds of all medium ships. That's a cool feature. That unique aspect should remain. Extra jump range would make it more preferable over ASP Explorer, but with less cargo space, yet still not enough to beat the lighter Diamondback Explorer or more expensive Krait Phantom. See how easy it is to balance? Lighter ship, further jump, so long as FSDs are equal. Vulture. Roll, combat. Change, speed and power plant increase. Vulture, my favorite ship, if it wasn't fucked over by engineering. A ship that can barely be called a small size, boasting 2 massive guns, massive thrusters. A ship that is literally min-maxed for combat at its size class, and I love the concept. Hell, even in execution, original developers made sure that the ship is so power plant constrained that you really have to pick and choose which parts to put in, and definitely put the power priorities right. The ship overall screams great balancing effort. Alas though, the engineering really screwed it over. Sure, now you could expand the power plant, but even so you were still power constrained, which is a good thing. However, all other bigger and smaller ships got far better. Yes, even Imperial Courier became more preferable. Reason for that? Speed. Now, despite Vulture housing the biggest size thrusters of all small ships, along with Dolphin, but let's forget about that, Vulture didn't go the fastest. Now sure, it was the second most maneuverable ship right after Eagle, but the top speed further fell behind Fer-De-Lance and even Federal Assault Ship and Clipper. Despite Vulture being the paper to the rock that were the large ships in this rock paper scissors combat, even versus large ships, Vulture barely could keep up. And then of course just recently Cobra 5 came out, that is faster and deals more damage than Vulture while being cheaper. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, nerf the hell out of Cobra 5. It should have never beat Vulture, and Vulture itself, well, give it at least 50 meters a second extra speed, so that it beats all the medium ships with the exception of Mamba, and maybe a little bit more power to the power plant. After all, small ships should be less durable but faster than mediums. No discussion. ASP Explorer. Roll, multi-roll. Change, nothing. Just like Cobra 3, ASP Explorer should be the foil to the combat counterpart and act as a comparison point for all the other ships in the price range. For example, compared to ASP Scout, the Explorer variant should be more rounded version. Sure, it should have less jump range, but offers greater space and weapons, making it more preferable for combat, mining, and do-it-all exploration trips. So yeah, buff ASP Scout, please. Federal Dropship. Roll, combat. Change required, speed increase, rotational speed readjustment, higher hull hardness, and overall game changes. The drop baby, as I call it. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's exactly like Viper 4, the biggest hull tank of its size class, medium, and it should remain that, and because of that it comes with the same problem. Hull tanks are screwed over by general game mechanics. Namely again, missiles dealing insane module damage and shields being far too good. But even compared to Viper 4, that drop baby is slow. Like really slow. To a point that it could be recategorized in weight and speed as a large ship. So then, the speed really needs to go up by about 30 meters a second minimum, at least to give it a fighting chance. Hull hardness also has to be increased since Chieftain, yes, Chieftain has higher hull hardness. And in addition of that, Federal Pickies used to have this weirdly good yaw turn rate speed, at least back in the day before new ships arrived. So how about we reduce some pitch speed, or better yet, roll speed, and boost the yaw by the same amount, giving Federal ships that ability to do yaw pitch compatible flight mechanic, rather than standard pitch roll for mouse controls. Type 7. Roll trading. Suggested change, additional small hardpoint and change from large to medium class. Oh god, the Type 7, long since been a contender for one of the worst ships in the game, and mainly due to one blatant and weirdly inexplicable limitation. It's a large class ship, meaning that it can't land on small outposts like, say, Python, which sure is way more expensive, but carries almost as much cargo. Yeah, I honestly don't know if this was an oversight, but Python should have never been the cargo king of medium ships, while Type 7 should have. Even visually, Type 7 is smaller than large ships, and now with the Type 8, oh god, don't get me started on that. We'll get to it. But for Type 7, it's a super simple fix to make it medium, and maybe, for good measure, just add that extra small hardpoint in that missing slot. I mean, the poor power distributor already is suffering, but this would be just funny. Also, it's still funny how Type 7 at least used to be the fastest yaw-turn rate ship in the game. Oh, that is until the recent additions. Honestly, it was a really cool feature and a funny thing too. Mandalay. Theoretical role, exploration, but in reality, multi-role. Suggested change: top speed reduction, removal of hardpoints, removal of optional internal slots, rotational speed adjustment. Alright, so Mandalay. Well, this ship boasts, at least by lore, exceptional jump range and some kind of atmospheric thrusters, so it should retain that rotational speed with exception of maybe yaw-turn rate. That should be reduced. Still, Mandalay has this unique engine pip effect, going from 2 to 4 pips, increases maneuverability by whopping 50%, whereas all the other ships in the game have about 15%. 15! Well, with the exception of Cobra 5, another ship with amazing yaw-turn rate speed. Go figure. But even so, when you think about the ship itself, well, it's made for exploration. More specifically, it's made to have the maxed out jump range. Well, in that case, it has to pay a massive price for that privilege, similar to Diamondback Explorer. So the reduction in optional slot space is a must to make it less competitive with combat and trading ships. Additional reduction in top speed might be warranted, but definitely a removal of small or maybe even a medium hardpoint. Only just one of them, so that it doesn't encroach on combat ship territory like for the Chieftain and Federal Assault ship. With all these removed parts, also the price should go lower by about 2 million. I mean, it is a pure jump range ship with good maneuverability, a travel ship that sacrifices everything just to be at the top of the jump range leaderboards, and I like the idea. And again, Frontier, you want to sell pay to win? Well, I hate it, but you can make it less obvious at least, and more interesting for everyone. Chieftain. Role, combat. Change, nothing. Alright then, so the Chieftain. When it came out, it utterly outclassed Federal Assault Ship and Clipper, but mainly did so because those ships had faults, rather than having too good of a stat block. Although, there could be a case made for it. Still, the biggest failure of Chieftain is its top speed, which makes it somewhat unappealing for PvP, while weapons themselves and internals make it perfect for pretty much anti-Xeno anything. I honestly still hate just how good this ship is, both in the balance and in the simple gameplay. It has its clear wins and definitely its faults, and that's why I like it. This is basically what Vulture could have been if they knew what was going on with engineering in the first place, I guess. Federal Assault Ship. Role, combat. Suggested change, rotational speed readjustment, and game changes required. Right then, on paper, the middle Federal Piggy is really well balanced with no faults. Well, with the exception of the way game functions. See, Federal Assault Ship is a hull tank, so like all hull tanks, it suffers from the game's failure to handle module damage and shields fairly. Additionally, the requirement for Navy rank is the main killer in the ship's popularity in the first place. And then to pile it on, you got the Chieftain that had no rank needed and same spec. And then no wonder no one uses it, even if Federal Assault Ship is actually faster. But as for the ship itself, well, just like the Dropship, Federal ships have this weirdly high yaw-turn rate speeds. Or at least that used to be back in the day before, again, the new ones came along. So let's continue the tradition, reduce the rolling, or maybe pitch speeds, and put that rotational speed back into yaw speed. This could actually be the calling card of Federal ships from now on. I like the idea. Imperial Clipper. Role, multi-role. Suggested change, shield improvements and optional compartment consolidation. Right, well, there's no easy way to say Clipper is just bad, like really bad, and engineering did no favors to it. In fact, you can blame it mainly why it's so bad today. See, before engineering, Clipper competed with Federal Assault Ship for early mid-game combat king. Clipper was faster but larger, with more shields, while Federal Ship turned better and had more hull. With engineering and the shield recharge mechanic implementation, it buried the Clipper in combat, and of course the gun port locations didn't help either. Now, even though this is technically a multi-role ship, I think it still should compete with Chieftain and Federal Ship. After all, it is supposed to be this Navy ship, for crying out loud. So here's what I propose. Remove all double compartments, like the double 3s, double 4s, and double 2s. This would change absolutely nothing in cargo space, however, it would limit the optional internal space itself. For combat, that would mean it would limit the hull reinforcement use by about 600 points. And put that extra health back into the shields, or at the very least give the 5th or maybe even 6th utility slot to the ship. This sort of a change would turn Clipper into a shield tank, like all the other Imperial Gutamaya ships. Like a sort of a baby version of a Fer-De-Lance, but, you know, a large ship for some reason. But yeah, seriously, this ship needs help. Also, the Navy rank system can go Crusader. Roll combat. Suggested change? I don't know, this ship's cooked, it needs game changes. Maybe speed or armor? I don't know. Alright, so back in the day when the ship came out, even the developers in-game lore presented it as, well, it's Chieftain, but with a fighter bay! Yeah, the fighter is the selling point of the whole thing, and the price that was paid to get that fighter bay in was everything else. The ship is slow, rotational speed is worse, weaker weapons, all of that just to accommodate the damn fighter bay. Yeah, this is where the curse of a ship-launched fighter starts. See, every ship in Elite that has a fighter bay are automatically worthless. Well, with the exception of Krait 2 and all the large ships. So, how do we fix it? Well, I don't know, really. I really struggle to find a meaningful way without making it overpowered. Without making major changes to ship-launched fighters or how they operate, there really doesn't seem to be an easy way to improve this travesty. See, back in the day when making the quote-unquote review, I questioned the purpose of even having the ship in the game. And that really hasn't changed. Now, sure, yeah, the ship itself needs about 30 meters a second more speed to even keep up with the Chieftain. And in anti-Xeno combat, again, the big emphasis is on that stupid fighter. But outside of the combat, well, it's even less useful than the Chieftain itself. Actually, you know what? I got it. Here's a wild suggestion. Make this the fastest but brittlest ship-launched fighter ship. Drop about 30% of the max armor, meaning, you know, few optional compartments and bulkhead HP, and just make it fast. Hit and run SLF pumping ship. Thus far, honestly, we don't have a ship like that in the game. So it would fill some kind of a niche as a glass cannon-like. That, of course, is if you don't want to rework how SLFs work in the first place. Challenger. Roll combat. Suggested change? Reduce hull hardness by 5 points, reduce max hull HP, buff shield HP, or add extra utility slot. Right then, the mentally challenged ship has exactly the same bulkheads as Dropship. However, Dropship should be the highest hull tank in the game, at least in the medium ships, which it still is. However, Challenger is faster with slightly more shields. So yeah, by now you should know the problem with the hull tanks. So, to make Challenger still worth the money and have a niche, how about we sacrifice some more hull for more base shields, or at least an extra utility slot. The speed, however, should be slower than Chieftain due to better weapons. This is important. Even though the ship is not as problematic as Crusader, the Challenger still begs the question of what was the point of having another combat ship in this price range? Federal Gunship. Roll combat. Suggested change? More speed, extra utility slot, or 2, upgrade 1 hard point, preferably the large one turned into a huge one, and federal maneuverability change. Ah yes, the Darkomobile. Boy do I love Gunship. It looks so cool, and sacrifices everything a medium ship can to become the coolest hull tank ever. Sadly, that means it also picked up a couple of STDs, and one of them is called the Curse of Ship-Launched Fighter, and thus sacrifices everything. See, Gunship is one of those ships where the traits of the ship are really clear. The cheapest medium ship with a class 7 power distributor, used by a lot more expensive Python, Krait, and Corsair. The medium ship with also the most hard points, hence the namesake after all, but the crippling factors are just as clear. The utterly unusable speed, for example. No, seriously, it can't go faster than 460 meters a second, which is slightly faster than Fer-De-Lance's non-boost speed. And of course, the abysmally low jump range, being literally the worst in the whole game. So, what do we do with the gunship? Well, first off, jump range stays. It's a perfect sacrifice for a combat ship. The ship also seems to be heavily relying on that ship launch fighter, which is a crutch. Sadly, the crutch itself is made out of the paper and rotting. So, without actually addressing properly the ship launch fighter design and mechanics, you're left with a heavy need to increase the top speed, at least by 60 meters a second. Now, yes, obviously, gunship should be a rather slow-ish ship, but insanely powerful and versatile due to the amount of guns, and extra utility slot would ensure at least some more shields, making the ship a bit more of a brick shithouse type if you end up deciding to fight it rather than run away from it. Hence, the damage output should also be increased by upgrading that one large hardpoint to a huge one, please. And to finally top it off, like Federal Soldier and the Drop Baby, even out the pitch and yaw speed rotations by sacrificing potentially roll speed for that Federal flight profile. Honestly, out of all the ships, I really want Gunship to shine once more, like the olden days of 2014 where, well, it was still kinda shit. But at least it had some teeth, unlike today's toothless cripple that is crawling even amongst other cripples. Krait Phantom. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change, increased rotational speeds, downgraded power plant, downgraded power distributor, and increased jump range. Right then, Phantom, it still feels weird, like a red-headed stepchild. No fighter bay, unlike the copy-paste source Krait 2, really nice jump range, and overall feeling of being a proper upgrade for something like an ASP Explorer. And yeah, that's what the ship should be. Right then, so because it's a lighter version of Krait 2, it also goes faster, however, for some weird reason, doesn't turn faster. So that needs increasing about 5 to 10%. Then the power plant. It's rather massive and honestly unnecessary, so downgrade wouldn't really hurt it, I think. Then the power distributor. The class 7 honestly should be reserved to some special ships. And basically because of this power distributor, it actually beats the Federal Assault ship, but if you downgrade it, it actually starts to compete with them. And because sacrificing these aspects make the jump range a little bit longer than Diamondback Explorer. Say 90 to 92 light year maximum would be perfect. This would ensure that the multi-role enthusiast would have some clear and good upgrade in mind, plus the ship would compete in the late game as a more spacier Mandalay by sacrificing that jump range a little bit. See, when Phantom came out, I almost got worried that the ASP Explorer would get replaced by this ship. And you know what? It should. After all, it costs 8 times more. And rating-wise, it should still be beaten by Clipper and Type 7, if Type 7 were to be made into medium, but that's a whole different story. Overall, Phantom is a good, sort of early entry into the high-tier ships. Type 8. Roll, trading. Change, reduce top speed and rotational speed, potential size increasement to large or mandatory reduction in cargo space, and reduction in shield HP. Alright, so reasoning-wise, this is obvious. Clearly, Python should have never been the top dog in cargo for medium ships. However, to stuff 400 tons inside this ship and calling it a medium is utter bullshit. And we all know why it was made this way. And you know, it's rather pathetic that you could have literally dropped a trading ship in this price range with 310, or if you need to increase the size versus Type 7, 330 max cargo, and you could have still made it a cargo king, but 400? Really? Oh, but wait, that's not all! Not only cargo space is overpowered, but also the top speed and maneuverability doesn't make sense either. See, every single trading ship follows a very obvious and straight line. The bigger the ship, meaning Type 6, 7, 8, 9, the more cargo space, obviously, but also reduction in jump range, top speed, and maneuverability. Except for Type 8 for some inexplicable weird reason. I wonder why. And this becomes extremely obvious when you remember that Type 7 also uses the same thrusters, not to mention Type 8's SCO optimization, of course. Seriously, this ship was made literally by babies. So for Type 8, speed reduction for boost 60 meters a second and 30 meters a second on base. It just simply has to be slower and less maneuverable than Type 7. Simple as that. Also, the shield HP is way too high. Drop it by 20 HP minimum from the base shields. Or if you feel really adventurous, remove at least one utility slot. And that's kind of the thing. Doing all of this would still make the ship notable and competitive, just not bullshit levels of overpowered. Krait 2. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change? Maybe a minor reduction in jump range. See, Krait 2 is rather hard to disagree with. It has obvious flaws that prevent it from going full combat roll while still being multi-roll ship and not beating Python. The only minor change I would suggest is, I guess, reduced jump range, just so it's not above ASP Scout, but that's about it. I guess you could just simply buff ASP Scout. After all, it is a very light ship, so it would make sense that it would beat the more well-rounded ship, at least in that one aspect. Orca. Roll, passenger missions, and exploration. Suggested change, increased internal space, and requires game changes. Alright, so Orca is basically already very fast in a straight line and has good jump range. The problem really lies inside the wider game mechanics themselves, namely passenger missions that support the ship's existence in the first place. And just like Dolphin, there's nothing much wrong with the ship itself or its concept, and the basics of the ship essentially are no combat capability, just jump range and good cargo space, while not outclassing the dedicated trading ships. So yeah, clearly you see that the game itself needs to be better in the first place. But in lieu of that, just toss in a few extra class 3-4 compartments for extra passenger missions. Or better yet, upgrade existing class 1s and 2s, if not 3s as well, to have more luxury or business class cabins. Fer-De-Lance. Roll, combat. Suggested change, minor shield decreasement / game changes. Alright, so Fer-De-Lance is essentially what Vulture wishes to be back in the day, and even today especially. A min-maxed, easy-to-fly ship that sacrifices everything to be the best thing in its niche. Still, because shields in Elite Dangerous are unbalanced, meaning, unlike, let's say, hull and hull reinforcements being an additive mechanic, shield and shield boosters work on multiplicity principle. This causes essentially shields to become massive thanks to horribly unbalanced engineering. So long story short, shields and engineering need to change for Fer-De-Lance to lose its tankiness and become more grounded. But since that's beyond today's scope, a simple 20 to 50 base shield HP reduction for Fer-De-Lance should suffice. Mamba. Roll, combat. Suggested change, minor shield decreasement, and game changes. Right, so Mamba is essentially a copy-pasted Fer-De-Lance just with a couple of changes, so the same changes apply to Mamba. Also, the ship, just like Viper and Spiegel, would benefit from racing minigame, but that's beyond the scope again. Python. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change, none. See, like ASP Explorer and the Clipper, these should be the multi-role comparison ships. Now granted, Python should have never been the cargo king of medium ships, but you can really blame that on Type 7 being retarded rather than Python being too good. Today, especially Python is dwarfed so heavily that to a point that you absolutely have no reason to use it, which only speaks volume to the outliers that made it obsolete. Python Mark II. Roll, combat, change, drastically lowered jump range, slightly reduced top speed, and rotational speed. Right, it doesn't even take an idiot to realize that this is a copy-paste of a Fer-De-Lance, just heavier due to more hull and less shields. But even despite that, the jump range for some reason is really high, 10 light years further. Also, how can a heavier ship turn faster? So yeah, the rotational speeds also should be in between Mamba and Fer-De-Lance. Wait, hold on, I checked again. Python 2's hull also is 450 tons, while Fer-De-Lance's is 280. So yeah, I call utter bullshit on devs making them the same, let alone Python 2 being better. Type 9. Roll, trader. Change, increase jump range. Right, so this ship directly competes with the Cutter, yet due to notably lower jump range, Cutter is often preferred, even despite losing a couple of tons in cargo. Like, literally, couple. So, yeah, the jump range should go a little bit higher to match Cutter at least. Corsair. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change. Removal of Class 7 thrusters or complete redesign of the thruster mechanic, and reduced jump range. Then option A, removed weapons but added optional slots, or option B, removed optional slots and added utility slots. Pick one. Right then, so this is a copy-paste of a Python, obviously. Yet visually, it is slimmer, for some reason. And okay, fine, have that. However, the Class 7 thruster is an abomination that should have never been added. It breaks the game mechanics so blatantly, it literally is the only ship in the game that never has to worry about weight. In a space game about spaceships. I mean, how stupid is that? Also, the jump range really needs to be reduced, because if you for some reason have missed the fact, it is the 4th furthest jumping ship in the game right now. But what about the multi-choice that I presented before? Well, Python should still be the most well-rounded ship in the game, or at least for the medium size. So Corsair, if it is a copy of a Python, should be an alteration of it, either for the jump range, sacrificing weight by dropping weapons or internal space, and I frankly would like that, or sacrifice jump range even further by keeping the weapons and arming up for the combat. Still, looking at the Corsair, it seems that it's going with less internal space and arming up for combat, much like Fer-De-Lance, but not as draconic. So keep the jump range, hell, maybe even the weapons, but gut the optional internals. Hell, maybe even downgrade all the class 6 slots to 5, which should also cost ship the shields. The fair trade for the jump range, I think. But whatever you do, the jump range still has to go down, because I remind you, it is the 4th furthest jumping ship in the game with absolutely no seeming flaws. Maybe with exception of maneuverability. But when you can go 600 meters a second at all times, what the hell is that? And at the same time beating dedicated explorers like Phantom and more so Diamondback Explorer, or let alone Orca and Dolphin. Basically, yeah, Corsair should not beat Krait 2 in jump range, unless you really got its internals. And so with all those changes, the price also should go down by about 5 million. Beluga Liner. Role, passenger missions, and exploration. Suggested changes. Required game changes, plus upgraded and more internals and increased jump range. The 2nd worst ship in the game. The 1% asshole. So, just like Orca and Dolphin, this one suffers from game mechanics simply not supporting its niche and existence. However, unlike those two, Beluga is even worse. The ship has the largest hitbox, smallest shields to size, garbage weapons, and yet somehow 6 utility slots to compensate for some reason. This is an abysmally bad thing, and I love its stank. Also, you might have noticed that during all of this, Yamiks does love good underdog story. Vulture, Gunship, Sulchip, and Clipper. Well, all my faves. And Beluga, sadly, no, I just pity. So anything with the Beluga that has to do with combat is out the window like a Russian oligarch. So what's left is jump range, which is crap, and cargo space, which is an even bigger crap. Now, sure, the internal space is geared so that you can house the most passengers possible, until you get to the big 3 plus Panther. But that's kind of the thing. Even with all that, it needs more. So then, if rebalancing passenger missions are basically a no-go, then there's only one thing to do to properly balance it. Upgrade the 1 class 4 optional to class 5. Then, do the same thing for the 4 class 3s. And even then it might not be enough, but it's a good start. After that, it's necessary for increasement in jump range, just below Orca's level. However, above Dolphin. Hell, even then I'm not sure if it would work. However, do not touch maneuverability or top speed. This is an ocean liner, not a speedboat. Type 10. Role, combat. Change, more hull or more speed? I don't know. So Type 10 was released and only useful for about 2 weeks. See, developers revealed Targoids and gave us the first AX weapons ever, to beat them. But no ship at the time could have 4 large weapons on board and not waste space, since experimental AX weapons were limited to 4 units. So as an answer to the Xeno threat at the time was Alliance rushing out the Type 10, with those 4 large hardpoint, and buttload of armor. And not much else. However, as soon as Guardian weapons appeared, which literally was a few weeks later, the ship was immediately 360 no-scope dunked into the dumpster by Krait 2. So, how do we even balance this monstrosity abomination of a tactical spoiler with the thruster? Well, you could add even more hull, but at that point you're still running into the same problem other hull tanks are. Essentially, it's worthless. Additionally, you could give it a bit more speed, and yeah, you can add 30 meters a second and nothing of value is lost or gained. And yeah, that's not really promising for a massive gunboat on life support, much like your average American on mobility scooter. So yeah, like Crusader, it should have been aborted at birth, but we have it now, and it drains our sanity. I don't know. Maybe you can figure out what to do with it, but beyond major game mechanic changes, I don't see this ship making a comeback in any other form than a pathetic player's AFK credit farmer. Anaconda. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change? None. See, Conda was the pinnacle of Elite Dangerous ship list, and it should remain that as a comparison point. It should be the furthest jumping ship right after Mandalay, as long as Mandalay is balanced according to my suggestions. But that's it. Well, okay, it could use a little bit more top speed. Plus, you can get a free Anaconda in Hutton Orbital these days as well. Corvette. Roll, combat. Change, more speed. Out of the big three, Corvette should be the best at the combat, and that includes being as fast as Cutter. Or at least not as goddamn slow. I mean, come on, there is a reason why people use Cutters for ganking and not Corvettes. Cutter. Roll, multi-roll. Suggested change? Lower top speed, a little bit. There's a reason why people use Cutters in ganking and not Corvettes. It's the top speed. Panther Clipper. Roll, trading. Change, reduced armor, reduced speed, rotational speed, and reduced jump range. So, do I need to repeat again? Like Type 6, 7, and 9. The more cargo you put in the ship, the less jump range, less speed, and less maneuverability, but a little bit more armor you get. However, in their infinite wisdom, developers made Panther faster than Conda, let alone Type 9. Hell, even by the sheer look, Panther should be the slowest, most cumbersome beast to pilot in the whole game, shouldn't it? After all, whenever you heard the damn oil tanker was easier to steer than a military carrier. I'm sorry, what? And then the armor too is obscenely high, at least 200 to 300 points too much. It seriously shouldn't beat Corvette, Conda, or the damn Type 10. And like all other cargo ships, reduce the jump maximum by at least 4 light years at least. If you're going the ultra maximum special boy with a special needs trading ship, well, guess what, bucko? Where's your sacrifice in stats, And finally, Type 11. Roll, trading, and mining. Suggested change? I don't know, I can't access it, so I can't comment too much on it. Though looking at the trend of pay-to-win era ships, yeah, it probably overpowered in some form. Most likely jump range and maneuverability, or top speed in most. Also, for whatever reason, it's medium, whatever. So I'll leave it up to FOMO suckers to comment on it. And that concludes the mainline ship balance suggestions. But there are still few more ships you can actually play with, so let's go over those as well. All ship launch fighters, increase rotational speeds now, as well as top speed at least. After all, these are super small and super brittle ships. They have to be nimble and fast, or at least faster than half-decent engineered ships. Meaning the top speed needs to be no lower than 600 meters a second and rotational speeds no lower than 300 degrees on all axes combined. Because you can't engineer or swap loadouts, you need to compensate somehow. As for each individually, Condor, give it federal rotational treatment, meaning pitch and yaw are similar speeds. The Gutamaya one, Imperial treatment, give it more shields. And Taipan, just more speed and rotation like all the others. As for the Guardian fighters, how the hell did developers not realize how useless they are? See, all of them have the lowest hull HP of 10, less than even Gutamaya one, yes. However, despite the looks, those unique looking shields, they're the same as normal shields. So, knowing that, remind me, how do Targoids use their weapon? Well, that's right, corrosive damage that seeps through all the normal current shields. So knowing that, what do you think happens when you have ship with super small hull but massive shields? Well, sure, your shields are holding up, but damage still seeps through, and guess what happens when you have very little hull? Hey there, I'm a developer! So, yeah, there are a couple of ways to fix it, but honestly, it would be just simply cool to have these special AX ships with special shields that protect against those space STD from the space murder bugs. After all, I remind you that in the game files there are something called corrosive resistant shields. So buckle up your assholes, boys, we got some more personal narrative coming. But seriously though, ship launch fighters still need wider game change. And also with the Type 11, with the mandatory fighter slot, just give us the mining ship launch fighter. It's been in the game files for years. But anyways, moving on. Last and certainly least, the cursed fleet carriers. Honestly, I only have 2 suggestions and the minor ones at that, so let's go. First off, if you still want to keep these things and not remove them, like I personally would like, remove the retarded upkeep. Point blank. Back in the day for the ship review and more, I've talked about just how bad this mechanic overall is, just what useless garbage it is, and how it annoys everyone. So just get rid of it. Additionally, lock the carriers behind the first elite rank. Now obviously that's a gatekeep principle, but hey, it's a big ship. Game-wise, it should be the pinnacle. And yeah, sure, this is not a proper way to improve them, but it's the cheapest and simplest. Obviously, next after that would be outfitting customization being truly custom, not just a weird pre-packaged template crap. And the same thing also goes for the squadron carrier, it really doesn't matter. But there you go. Now I know it was a long list, but what do you think? What other simple changes can we suggest to existing ships that would require at least a few lines of code at most, if not a simple value change, to uplift every single ship and make them exciting again, to fill roles that they once filled or occupied, or maybe make new ones? No matter when in your career you use the ship, whether you're just starting out or you've played the game for thousands of hours. And that's really what makes it a proper challenge, to make every small or large ship still viable even after you've earned even the biggest dongmobiles. To have a reason and a gameplay reason to pick up those small ones, or for taxi or something. After all, I believe the game would be a lot more interesting when you have variety of choices to pick from, and none of them are a clear upgrade over several styles of a gameplay. So who knows, maybe my generous wisdom will be listened to by at least someone. Well, either which case, why not help out and share the video around, like, subscribe and all that good stuff. Let's see if a positive change can be made, and once more we could see someone flying federal gunship, Vulture, Belugas even, and do so unironically for the memes or something stupid as that. I'd like that, wouldn't you? So, as usual, I gotta say big thanks to all my biggest supporters at Patreon and YouTube members, and if you do want to support my dead horse beatings and other nonsense, there are links down below and you can toss a buck in the pile as well, and I thank you for it. And so, I'll see you then next time.